Tanita is the National Director of Generational Impact for Young Life Ministries. She also is the Interim Director of Young Life here in Spokane. She also volunteers on occasion. When she's in town, she's able to step over and help Young Life at Meade High School. So some of you students may recognize her from there. She's married to Ashley, and she's got 2 kids, Camden and Phoenix. Ashley and Tanita have been married for 17 years, and her boys, you'll see them around here on Sunday morning because this is her home church. Tanita has a master's in Christian leadership from Fuller Seminary, and that she got her doctorate at Phoenix Seminary, and the focus of her doctorate was how to share the gospel with Gen Z. And she's got a book coming out in the fall that you can get on Amazon and pre-order it now if you want. It's what Gen Z really wants to know about God. It's being put out by InterVarsity. And so, can you guys welcome Dr. Tanita Maddox? Tanita.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you so much. Oh, it's so fun to be with y'all and talk about Gen Z tonight. One of the things that'll be really helpful about this conversation is if we were going to do a mission trip to Peru or to Cambodia, and we said, hey, come and so you can learn what this group of people, how they live, how they view the world, things that are their customs, their language. And you'd think, wonderful, I'm going to come because I don't know about this. I'm going to sit and learn. We're going to do the same kind of mental state when we talk about Generation Z because every generation has its own generational culture. And actually what happened was that this generation's experience were so different. It was a pretty sharp cultural shift. So we're going to have a mindset going, I'm going to learn about this group of people that I don't know a lot about. Because one of the reasons I started studying Gen Z was I have been working with middle school kids and high school kids since 1998. And about 7 or 8 years ago, it was like a switch had gone up and something had completely changed. And I found high levels of anxiety and panic attacks, some hostility towards Christianity. I found kids that didn't want to hang out in groups. They only hang out one-on-one. And I was like, something's wrong with me. I must have gotten too old to work with high school students, you know? And then after some reading and realizing, it's not me. It's that something changed and there was a generational shift and I didn't know about it quick enough to actually get on my feet and figure out what's going on. So whenever we talk about generations or generational study, we're going to talk about wide, overarching generalizations of what a group of people has in common, right? We're talking about actually billions of people when we talk about Gen Z. And so this may not be every individual's particular experience, but it is their generational context, so it does impact how they're navigating the world. We are going to talk about some questions we can ask Gen Zers in our life, and these questions will recognize something that we have to learn about our young people. So it's no longer like, I did it, or when I was 15, you know, I understand completely what it's like to be 16-year-old. I was 16. It's no longer that. That's out the window. So we start to understand how they're experiencing the world and show our kids respect and the differences of how they're experiencing the world and how we are. Now, I want to say this. For the Gen Zers in your life, you are the expert in them, all right? You are the expert in the Gen Zers in your life. I'm coming by with some research and some study to kind of come around you, but you know your people. And so you can take this and kind of put through a filter for what is right for the Gen Zers in the context that you are interacting with our next generation. But the first question people ask is they're like, hold on a second, who is Gen Z? Like, what are the generations? So we're going to start back here. Anyone born before 1945? So earlier than 1944 or earlier? Yes, we have what was called the silent generation. You so silently raised your hands also. That was so wonderful, yes. And then after that, 1945 to 1964, here we go. These are our baby boomers. Look at you. Wow, you were spread out. You guys came. The baby boomers showed up tonight, y'all. Yes. All right, 1965 to 1979, anyone? In the back, Gen X, that's the most enthusiasm I've ever heard from Gen X ever in my life. I am also Gen X, and it's really funny because, the baby boomers they're named after the boom of all the childbirth that happened after World War II. Then Gen X came along, and there was like nothing in particular to mark that generation. Like, I don't know, X, that sounds good. Like, we'll just do that. So Gen X happened 1980 to, we'll say 1996. Anyone in here? Millennials. The millennials. With the millennials, they're marked by the coming of the internet. That came with the millennials. All of a sudden, we had internet, and that's a world they grew up in. Now, this is where we're going to get a little technical, okay? Because generally, if you Google Gen Z or you look it up in other places, the most widely accepted birth years for Gen Z are 1997, 2012. That's if you say that, you're fine. You fall in line with what most people are saying. If you want to get particular, was anyone here born between 1994 and 1998? Anyone? One. All right. You are so special. Okay. Here's the thing about this little cusp right here, is generally this group of people has kind of 1 foot in millennial land and 1 foot in Gen Z land. So depending on your birth order and your exposure to technology and different things, you may find yourself either leaning like I understand Gen Z or I understand millennials more. But I'd say these people, they're the only group of people that speak the language of 2 generations at the exact same time. They are critical to have on every single team that we have. Yeah, they're friends of ours in our lives because we're like, help me understand, because they can translate for us. They're really, really special. And then you end up with this Generation Alpha that's starting to come up, and this is like the hot topic in generational research right now of when does Gen Alpha start. So there's 3 major theories right now floating out there. One is 2010, which I crossed out. Okay, so this comes out of Australia with a researcher named Mark McCrindle, and he basically years ago just came up with a theory that every generation after the baby boomers is 15 years, no matter any events or circumstances that are happening in the world. So that's he decided, and then he just added 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15. He identified it 2010 years and years ago, decided to name it, and has marketed it like crazy. So you will see this year everywhere. It all goes back to him. There is no other researcher that agrees with him as like, yes, he's super correct, but people are repeating it because, people make a lot of money if they can name a generation and identify them. All right, the second big year is 2013. That comes with Jean Twenge out of San Diego. She's one of our leading generational experts. And in her book, she has a book on generations that goes all the way from the silence to Gen Alpha, side-by-side comparison. It is incredible. But to give you an idea of how much research is there on Gen Alpha, her chapter on Gen Z is 100 pages. Her chapter on Gen Alpha is 10 pages. So that's where we are. And then we have Jonathan Haidt, who last year came out with this big book, The Anxious Generation. And he argues we have not seen a shift yet. Until we interact with technology differently and our kids interact with technology differently, we won't see a change. So that's kind of like the hot goss as it comes with generations right now. So who is Generation Z? Well, they've often been called digital natives because of their early access to interactive smart technology. Tablets, smartphones, Alexa, it's all been a part of their life. And so smartphones and social media mark this generation. They are globally connected and have been globally connected for a long time. So this is the first generation that we see a global identity, right? Baby boomer, Gen X, these are generally American terms that we use, but Gen Z has actually been used globally. And they make up about 1/3 of the global population, and they're connected with each other. And so what generational research say is the online culture is much more homogenous than we realize, meaning Gen Zers across the world have much more in common, especially in that space, with each other than they may with the adults who live 2 houses down from them. So that has also led to extremely high pressure and a high pressure environment. Okay, so I ran track and field in high school. I was pretty good. I never made it to state, but I was pretty good at my high school. But the only people I had to compare myself against were the actual people I ran against, right? It was the early 90s. Like, that was it. That was it. So I only compared myself to the people I actually physically raced against. I am still a runner. My social media knows I'm still a runner, and so it feeds me Instagram accounts and posts from runners. You know what it feeds me is middle-aged women who are running like 6-minute miles and training for Boston. That's my comparison now. Not the middle-aged woman coming back with physical therapy. She's not on there. And so now imagine being 14 or 15, and you are not comparing yourselves just to the kids in your neighborhood. You have access to see anyone your age around the world interested in the same things you are and comparing yourself to them across the world. So it's created an incredible amount of pressure for our young people. A big part of values and identity formation is being impacted by the online world. They can see something shared in real time, and they can see it applauded and reposted and commented, or they can see it called out, canceled, deleted, shamed, all those things. So they can make that call on what values they should have based on the global forum that's responding in real time of what's happening online. All right, so here we go. Number one question that young people, that Gen Z is asking is, am I safe? So safety is a top value for Gen Z. And unlike, for us Gen Xers, safety was basically like, for me, it was don't ride in the back of a pickup truck. That was kind of the line, or talk to strangers. Those are the two things. That was what being safe was, right? But with Gen Z, it's not only physical safety, it's emotional safety, it's psychological safety, and it's gone further. It's safety from being uncomfortable, it's safety from risk, safety from failure, safety from being disagreed with, and it becomes broader and broader and broader. And one of the difficult things about this is it's so broad, we have a really difficult time defining it. But then every individual has their personal definition of what it means to feel safe and what they need to feel safe. Some people need a small group to feel safe. Some people need a big group to feel safe. And so it becomes really difficult, especially when we're in environments where we're working with young people and we say things like, this is a safe space, I'm a safe person, and we're not working with the exact same definition that the audience is working with. We can accidentally break that promise because we never actually defined what safe was. And so they are walking around, looking at the world, assessing whether or not it's safe, which at the end of the day does not make room for resilience. If you are safe all the time, it becomes difficult to develop resilience. Resilience comes from difficulty, obstacles, hardship, moving through those things. And so you can see what happened is we had a generation raised with the value of be safe. And now we're like, well, how come they haven't become resilient in the same way the previous generations have? So those are working next to or directly against each other. And so these things also, these three experiences, if you take all of it away and said, I don't believe in any of that. I said, okay, so there's three things that happened with our young people as they were growing up that is really foreign to most older generations. One, they grew up with social media, did not exist when I was in high school. Number two, school shootings and active shooter drills wasn't even a thought when I was in high school, right? But my children go have active shooter drills at their school. And honestly, I feel like school shootings have become so common, they're just passed by in the news now. And then third, a global pandemic just landed in the middle of their development from whether they're in elementary school, middle school, high school, or college. All of a sudden, the world shut down when they were growing up. And so let's look at this mental health piece and all the impact of this, because we know that with Gen Z, there was a rise with anxiety, depression, suicide, all those rose. But how do they rise? So suicide rates doubled for those aged 15 to 19 between 2010 and 2012, or 2020, sorry. But, and this is the number that always gets me, the suicide rates for those aged 10 to 14 tripled from 2007 to 2018. That's not just saying we talk about it more so kids are experiencing more. Those are the rates of what is being measured, of young people dying. 20% of adolescents aged 12 to 17 had a major depressive episode in 2022, and 1 in 15 had made suicide plans. 47% of young people say they're moderately or extremely depressed. 55% say they're moderately or extremely anxious. 45% say they're moderately or extremely lonely. And if you do the math on that, you've got to go, oh, people are dealing with more than one of those things at a time. So this is what happened to our young people. How did this kind of go? Well, this is a study done from Jean Twenge that measures suicide, self-poisoning, major depressive episodes, and depressive symptoms. And you can see that 2012 year becomes the important year in a lot of these studies. It starts to rise up super high, and it follows the same rate as access to smartphones and social media by our young people. It follows the exact same line. There's actually a global study on loneliness of adolescents, loneliness specifically of 15-year-olds, that they studied in 37 countries around the world, and 36 out of 37 had the exact same trajectory that we have in the United States of this, and loneliness also. That's all the same trajectory of phones. So you'll notice, this chart right here, where does it stop? 2018, that's pre-pandemic, right? So this was a problem before the closures happened. So then we go further on. How do we measure depression in young people? They answer these, how they relate to these three sentences. I can't do anything right, which is that red line. My life is not useful, which is the green line. And I do not enjoy life, which is the blue line. And you see, it was going up before 2020, and then 2020 exacerbated what was already a problem with our young people. So whether or not your Gen Zer struggles with mental health, they are impacted by that environment. They know someone who is, whether or not they are. So what becomes really difficult for me as a 45-year-old to understand the mind of a young person, and my best way to try to get my brain around it is to compare what's it like for them versus what was it like for me when I was, let's say, a high school student. So let's say the 1990s, for those of us who were in high school in the 90s. Woo, yeah, all right, okay. So here we go. We had a family landline. We had a home phone, right? Maybe you had a second line, maybe you had call waiting. Everyone's house had rules about when you could call their house, right? When you couldn't call that house. Not that they were posted anywhere. You just found out when you called the wrong time, and you got like that, what are you doing calling this? You're like, all right, yeah. So you didn't. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about, I was a high school athlete, which means by the time I got home and that kind of cutoff of when you weren't allowed, the phone wasn't allowed to ring anymore happened, I probably was reachable maybe an hour and a half a day by phone. Maybe. Everything else was in person, right? I put collect calls here too, because some of y'all, when we grew up between that time, before cell phones came, but there were definitely payphones everywhere, but you were like independent enough to have your parents drop you off somewhere, but you had to tell them to pick you up without a quarter. So you made that like 1-800-COLLECT, right? And it's like, would you accept a collect call from, I'm in the food court, we're done. Like it was just this really fast, like 3-second, basketball game's over, pick me up, like whatever it was, so that your parents could deny the charges and get the message to come get you. It's a very stressful time in our lives. But versus our young people are reachable 24 hours a day on multiple platforms. I mean, imagine, I was only reachable maybe by an hour and a half, and that was if, you got through to the family of 6 that shared the one phone, right? If it wasn't being tied up by someone else, you got this very small window where you could talk to someone on the phone because it was also, get off the phone, you're tying up the line. So they're reachable 24 hours a day on multiple platforms. When they wake up in the morning, they have notifications of things they've missed while they're sleeping. They begin their day behind already because of the things that are trying to reach them. All right, here we go. In the 90s, I moved from having a radio in my room, which is so cool, to a Walkman with my mixtapes, yes. Eventually to the Discman, this situation, yeah. But all the music was limited to like my personal library was like all 5 CDs and what was on the radio, and that was it. And then when you got tired of listening to music, you just stopped because you're like, I can't hear the song anymore. You just were quiet. Versus today, our young people can stream any music they want, any video. They can watch whatever they want, listen to it, whatever they want. My kids treat me like their personal jukebox. They're like, play this song, because they can. Any music is accessible at all times. All right, when I was a teenager in the 90s, conflict was in person or on the phone. There was like the 2 options. Maybe you wrote a note, but that note got passed around. Everyone read your business, and so none of that anymore. that was it, because your conflict was with people that you were in real life with. And so that was the two ways to do it. Versus today, we can have conflict over text messages, over Finsta, which would be a fake Instagram account. So we have young people who can create a fake Instagram account of a fake person and then find you and bully you and comment you and talk about you online. So that can happen there. We have just like relationships that can be ended with a click of a button. So unfollow, and the relationship is done. In fact, one of our college students was telling me about this. I was asking about her friend, and she's like, oh, well, she unfollowed me. I said, oh, okay. It didn't click, right? So I was like, so what happened? What did you guys talk about? She's like, she unfollowed me. I'm like, yeah, so what argument did you guys have? Like, she goes, she unfollowed me, Because what I wasn't picking up was they have their own language in that digital space. Being a digital native means a digital language with a digital culture. In that digital space, her clicking the unfollow button communicated all she needed to communicate. It was a language they spoke that I wasn't picking up on, but it ended relationships. So think about how quickly relationships and friendships can end for our young people by simply clicking a button or just not responding and ghosting someone, right? Like ghosting, when I was in high school, would be this. Like there's nowhere to go. So that's what's happening here. They could have all that happening on their screen and we can not see any of it because it's happening in their hands on a phone and we're not aware of all the conflict that they're dealing with. Okay, here we go. You got updated of what happened on the weekend on Monday when you got to school. Maybe you were at the thing, maybe you weren't at the thing. You didn't know until you got to school and everyone was talking about what happened that weekend. Versus our young people today, they can watch in live time everything they weren't invited to. They can see their friends on their map collect without them. They can see their crush go on a date with somebody else. They can watch everything they're missing out of, and they can do it while being alone in their room on their phone. They can see everything. All right, my embarrassing moments from high school, they're mostly just stories. They're legends, really. But they're mostly forgotten at this point. I don't think anyone tells these stories about that. Versus today, every single moment from our young people can be recorded, posted, shared with or without their permission, with or without their knowledge. Everything is recorded. There's no room for mistakes. And then, of course, we had quiet in our life, so I went to sleep. Like, we had, 4 channels. And by the time it got to the 10 o'clock news and Johnny Carson, I was like, I'm out. So I just go to bed. Like, I was not interested in either of those things. I just went to sleep. And it was quiet. And guess what? I woke up to an alarm clock, right? And it was quiet. It was quiet until I got to school. There was no music playing. There was no TV on. There was no things in my ears listening to it because, again, the house had to be quiet. So versus for our young people, the noise never stops. A lot of our young people go to sleep with the noise in their ears. I once brought up to a group, I said, hey, what would you guys do would you consider waking up and not turning on your phone until after you had breakfast? So you got up, you got ready, once you had breakfast, then you turn it on. And this girl, she looks at me like this. And I said, tell me about that. The most common response I've heard from our Gen Zers is, but if it's quiet, then I'll think about everything I don't want to think about. I'll feel everything I don't want to feel. So it's much easier just to be distracted from it. So I want you to pause now. There's a lot of information. I want you to turn and talk to someone next to you. Reflect on one thing that's different from your childhood or adolescence, from young people today, or one thing that stuck out to you so far. Go ahead and turn and talk. All right, how are we doing? Are we doing good? We're doing okay? Yes? It's a lot to take in for a moment, isn't it? To see how our young people are navigating this world. Here's one question. Do you ever feel like there's a communication breakdown with our young people? And I'm not talking about the Skibbity Ohio Riz situation that's happening right now, which I remember my kindergartner came home and he said Skibbity in the car, and I was like, what in the world? What I'm talking about is that we are actually learning how to speak a different language when it comes to being in relationship with our Gen Zer friends. See, Barna did a study a few years ago and said 73% of Gen Z, so almost 3/4 of Gen Z, wants to go to older adults to talk about the important things, the real things, the big, hard decisions that they have to make, the stuff they're scared about. That's 3/4 would like to talk to someone from an older generation. However, 71% of Gen Z, so almost the exact same percentage, is scared to do so because they're afraid that the person they talk to will not understand the pressure they are under. So they're worried they're going to feel worse. The person I most want to go talk to, I'm scared of because what if they don't care? In fact, Newsweek just came out with an article, it came out today, that's actually 11% of Gen Z has now started to turn to AI and ChatGPT for relationship advice. Yeah, that's only 10 or 11%. I bet you it's gonna go up because there's no risk on a computer, right? The ChatGPT can't shut you down. It's not a relationship that's gonna break down, and so it becomes a place where I can just put those things out, but when they really want is to talk to a human being about what's going on in their life, but we're having to understand that we are speaking a different language with our young people. So here's an example. One question that comes from Dr. Kara Powell and the Fuller Youth Institute, as well as others, say we should ask our Gen Zers this question, at least on a daily basis. On a scale of 1 to 10, how's your mental health? Now, here's the thing. We may hear that question and hear one lens of what that question is asking, but when we talk to our younger folks, they see it as a much holistic question. They don't see it limited to here, which is where I see it limited to my mental health. They see it as a whole experiential question. That when you say, how's your mental health, every time I've done this with a young person, they tell me about their day, they tell me what happened, tell me how they physically felt, how much sleep they got, what they ate, because for them, it's all tied together in a holistic experience. In the same way that if I walked to you and I said, how's your heart? You're not like, oh, I saw my cardiologist. Thank you so much for asking me, right? We're not thinking it's here. We're thinking it's here. And so that's language we might use as older generations, but our young people are using mental health as a whole thing. So if you try that, you could text a Gen Z in your life, say, hey, 1 to 10, how's your mental health? They usually can give you a number like immediately, and we say, tell me why. They tell you more about their day and what's going on. It's just a different language. It's not a question that I'm used to asking or being asked, but it's one that our young people now appreciate. So Young Life did a study, a global survey, about 7,000 adolescents in different parts of the world, and gathered that in what we call the Relate Project to find out how are adolescents relating to each other, or do relationships, what leads to flourishing. And when it came to these are the people I can talk to about things that really matter. Number 1, mom. Come on, moms. That was the number 1 answer. They want to talk to mom. Number 2 was a romantic interest. And then number 3 was dad. So dad get there. And then sibling and grandparent. And then a religious leader. So family came first as I want to talk to my family about this. And then right after that, religious leader, youth leader, pastors, and then teachers, coaches, bosses, and managers. When it came to the closest friends, 55% preferred face-to-face communication. Notice it says face-to-face for their closest friends. So again, we have digital natives who are very used to screens and are comfortable behind screens, but for the closest relationships, we want to do face-to-face. So by the way, if you got a young person in your life that's meeting you face-to-face, that says something about you. That says something about how they feel about you and their relationship with you. That's a big deal. So that's really special. Sometimes our digitally native kids, our young people, prefer big conversations this way, with an available exit. How many of you have had yet young people, they stand in your doorway at bedtime, that's when they've decided to have the conversation, right? Like you're in bed. Lisa DeMore, who's a clinician, came out with a book last year called The Emotional Lives of Teenagers. It's very good, but she said it's because there's an exit for the kid. Your kid's not trapped there. They know the conversation will end because you will have to go to bed at some point, but they can choose how long they want to stand in your doorway and when they want to leave. So they have control over the conversation there, and that's why they're staying there. So sometimes kids want an exit, going like, if we're going to have the big conversation, will there be a time that I leave, or am I trapped in this car for you for 4 hours, and now I have to have this conversation that I don't want to have? Number 2 is often through a screen that our young people would like to have the big conversations. This would be the equivalent of, when I was growing up, we called it windshield time, going for a drive where you didn't have to look each other in the eyeballs for the big conversation. You looked at the windshield. So our young people now prefer the screen as that kind of buffer, and they're able to help to have that enter into the conversation when they're not looking into our eyeballs, and sometimes prefer the text message to start the conversation. I know it's not mostly our comfort level, but like when we're entering into a different culture and we're entering into a second language, this would be our second language we're speaking to invite conversation, to go in through the screen where they are and help provide that windshield time for them. Number 3, sometimes they would like to communicate using something other than words. We have GIFs and memes, and you love it. You're like a whole new vocabulary tonight that's happening. But we're up in pictures with text that they're using to communicate pretty intense, major things going on through a humorous way that's shared. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I text a high school kid or a college kid, say, send me a GIF or send me a meme on how your day is. And they send this. So at the very top, it says, me trying to fall asleep at night as every awkward thing I've said goes through my mind. And it's just a close-up of the scared cat face, right? Okay, no laugh on that. I thought it was, thank you, Caleb, thank you. Okay, so what is this young person telling me? Let's say I said, hey, how was your first day on your first full-time job? And they sent me this. What are they telling me? What are they feeling right now? You guys are so quiet. I have to talk louder than that. Terrified, thank you. What else? Overthinking, overanalyzing. Insecure. Doesn't want to talk. Yeah. Socially uncomfortable, socially awkward, probably wants to do the right thing, wants to perform well, and is worried that they didn't match up to what the expectations were of the day. All those things that are coming through their head that now, in the quiet of night, right, they're loud realizing, oh no, did I mess up here? Did I mess up there? Do I have got to apologize here? Is that a relationship is intact? All those things are going on. The thing is that this same person will probably not have the words to sit in front of me and say, I was really nervous today. I had a lot of interactions that I'm worried that maybe people don't like me. And replaying things because I've got anxiety about going tomorrow, and what if I stepped on someone's toe and I don't know, and I make more mistakes, and I make more mistakes after that. Like, they can communicate all through that in a way that's comfortable for them, when sometimes our young people don't have the words to say what they're feeling. So this can work sometimes with folks to just say, if you can't tell me, send me a GIF or send me a meme of what's going on, because they're communicating much more through that little picture, that little emotion, than they will as saying, hey, how was your day? Fine. Send me a meme. Send me a GIF. How are you feeling right now? And we've seen all conversations come through picture after picture after picture, because it's a humorous release, but it also is an opportunity to share in a language that's more comfortable for our Gen Zers. And the last one, here's the surprise. Sometimes they want to talk to us through a journal. So in Amazon, you can look this up. There's something called the Between You and Me journal, made for a bunch of ages. I learned about this from one of my other friends who does Young Life, because her 14-year-old daughter felt a lot of shame about her inability or inadequacy in having face-to-face conversations. She was so used to texting through her phone that when it came to sitting down to talk face-to-face with her mom, she had a really difficult time. So they started communicating through a journal and writing letters to each other. And that really transformed the relationship, because it gave her daughter a space she could communicate with her mom on her terms, not on her mom's terms. We're used to communicating on our terms. And my terms are you sit face-to-face at my countertop and you talk to me in my eyeballs. However, we're learning that our young people desperately want to talk to us, but it's got to be on their terms so that they can have that conversation with us. The number one thing I hear from our Gen Zers, as far as what do you wish we knew? They say, please listen to us. And I know, I'm like, well, I am listening to you. You're not saying anything right now. So, and how often it says that, like, I am listening. You're not saying anything. But what we're learning is they're communicating in a totally different way. And so one of the questions that we're learning to ask is to say this: on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you feel I listened to you? Here's the caveat: no defending, no disagreeing, no saying but. This is about the young person being able to express how well they feel listened to when they're with you. And that takes a lot of self-control. Like, do not answer that question unless you are ready to be quiet and listen to what that young person has to say to you. One of the things I've learned to say is, you're right, I don't understand. I don't understand what it's like to grow up at this time. I have no idea what it's like to have walked a mile in your shoes as you've been growing up in the world today. But I really want to understand. Can you help me? And put my position as one of learners. One exercise that we've done is start giving kids index cards or a piece of paper and say, finish this thought. Dear adults, I wish you understood or cared about. And then let them write. I've collected about 100 letters from the western United States and the Midwest. And I'd like to share with you a few of those that we've put together in a little video. But as you're watching it, I want you to pay attention to this specific idea. Listen for our young people's request for us to be a part of their lives. Listen for their desire for a relationship with you and me. I know it's not enough time. I just flooded you with so much emotion and information, and then I know it's not enough time. But I'm so excited to see everyone engage in this and with what's going on with our young people. Part of it is understanding that just the massive amount of pressure that Gen Z has been surrounded with around them. And part of it is understanding there's been three main messages that they have received culturally from predominantly the social media world that has leaked into the real world now and has really surrounded them as they've come on of age and then gone into adulthood. One is the message, you're not enough. And that is perpetuated by being able to measure whether you are enough of whatever, enough to be loved, enough to be valued through the likes and comments of social media, that has provided a way, a metric to decide how valuable are to others. But one of the things, and then the finish line of like, will I be enough? It keeps moving for them. The culture around them just keeps moving it for them. So once I get this, I'll be enough, but then it moves again. So there's that constant chase for that. What's happened is globally, 41% of Gen Z is not confident they are worthy to be loved. That's not saying whether or not they are loved. They're saying whether or not you love me, I'm not confident I'm actually worthy of that. That's globally. It's a little higher in the U.S. In the U.S., 46% of Gen Z is not confident that they are worthy of love. So almost half of our kids. So what can we do? Number one, we can offer compassion. We don't say, pressure, you don't know anything about pressure. We say, you are under a lot of pressure. I can see that. We can affirm the uniqueness they bring, that they have value in this world, that no one can strip them of, right? That's one of the great things about God giving every person his image, is he says, you are loved and you are valued because I made you that way. And they're trying to figure out how do they fail every single day? Like every day they're going to go to bed going, I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough. So how do we reverse the message and also say, sometimes, you know what, we're not. Sometimes we are not enough to make the cut of the team or to get an A or whatever it is. So how do you navigate that failure and then get up and then move on? Instead of letting that failure be a definitive factor of your identity and saying you are this or not this, how do we just have failure be just a pit stop on the road to becoming who we are? The second message is this: there is no room for error. Perfection is demanded. And part of this is what's happened with cancel culture coming about right when our young people are navigating adolescence and identity. And all of a sudden they were surrounded by a culture that said, if you make a mistake, we're going to nail you, right? If you ask the wrong question, right? I talked to a lot of Gen Zers who are like, I will not raise my hand in class, because it's not just about saying the wrong thing. It's about asking the wrong question. And then you get nailed, you get called out, you get shamed, you get cut off from relationship. And even not doing anything, because they're like, well, I'm not going to say something or do anything, so then I'm not going to do anything at all. I don't want to get in that crossfire. And that becomes a firing range also of like, you're doing nothing, you're passive to the problem, and then we get nailed again. So just imagine trying to grow up and these two messages are competing with each other all the time. You are not enough, but you have to be perfect, right? You are not enough, but you're not allowed to make any mistakes. And then you go, why are people so anxious? Like, why are young people so angry? Like, These things are fighting against them all of the time. Now, I want to pair this with when I ask young people this question, hey, what do you hear about yourself from older generations or from the media? I'm going to ask you. You can put those answers in your head. What do you think our Gen Zers hear about themselves from older generations in the media? I'm going to guess it's going to be words like weak, snowflake, over-emotional, self-centered, entitled. And I have yet to have a positive word come out of a young person's mouth. So what they hear, again, is that message. You're not enough, and you can't be making these mistakes. And while older generations have always bagged on younger generations, the difference of what's happened with Gen Z is that it is finding them through multiple platforms and coming at them whether or not they're looking for it. It's not just the people around their neighborhood or at their school or whoever's around. It's coming at them 24 hours a day really loud. And what they hear from the older generations is, we don't like you. And it is our job to raise our next generation and to speak words over them that give them a vision for who God is calling them to be. And we can't be surprised the words we speak over kids when they live into the words that are being spoken. So what words are we speaking over our young people that draws them into who they're designed to be and how they can reflect the image of God here on earth? So here's some things we can do. Make room for failures and mistakes. Do something that we're gonna fail at, because we'll say, that's okay, that's how we learn. Failure's how we learn. There is room for mistakes. In fact, that's just a bunch of life is mistakes and trying to figure out how to get through that. Share your failures, even from today. Even today, sometimes I'll talk with my kids and I'll say, I lost my temper when I was driving the car. I got so mad on the inside, I started to sweat like so much inside of the car. And why did that bother me so much? So we share your mistakes, even the little ones from today. Not just the big ones that happened 20 years ago, but just the little ones happen day to day to day. So they know this is real life. Coach on how to navigate through failures and mistakes, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. I think about even the action of teaching someone how to forgive. Forgiveness is an abstract concept. Can we break it down to talk to a young person and say, mentally, this is what I work through. Physically, sometimes I go for a walk. Sometimes I got to take a lot of deep breaths. Sometimes I know when my heart starts to beat and I get real hot, I have not forgiven it yet. Can we break those down into concrete things to help our young people? The third message they're getting is that there is a perfect choice. So that fear of missing out situation, that FOMO that we hear about, part of that's been cultivated by the social media and marketing actually to go through. And like Nike's really good at this to say, hey, we're only going to have this shoe. We're only going to have like 200 pairs of this shoe. If you don't get this shoe, you're going to miss out. For the rest of your life, you're going to regret not having this shoe. So they've been kind of marketed to that specific tone. And again, they're aware of everything that's going around because they can watch all the things that were options for them that they didn't go to and are being told there is a perfect choice. And so when we listen to our young people stress out about their major, their job, what classes they're going to take, what sport they're going to do, what activity they're going to do, and we were like, why are you so stressed about this? It's not, you can change majors, it's fine. You can do a job for a while and change, it's okay. It's because they have been embedded in their brain as that there is a perfect choice. You have to find the perfect choice or you will fail. So we get to affirm, there is no perfect choice. Most of the time, there's not a perfect choice. Play out all the options with them. Okay, so if you choose this, what will happen here? If you choose this, what will happen here? And actually help them work out the next steps of all that. And what happens if it isn't what they hoped for? I like this one. What does God have for us? So let's say you make the choice. You guys came here tonight. Let's say your friends had a blowout party and they were like, I can't believe you missed it. It was so fun. Like, Norm did a handstand on a table and push-ups. It was so cool. Can you do that? Yeah. And you're like, oh man, I was at this thing. I go, yeah, so why did God have you at this place instead of somewhere else? What did he want for you in that space? that he had you there for that and not somewhere else. So we have to pay attention to what is God is doing. And then we have the option to choose joy and be present and not let the idea of I should have steal a joy from where we are at that very, very moment. We're going to go to this. So questions to ask our young people. What do you wish I understood or cared about? Or what do you understood older adults cared about? That's a little less direct for our young people to say, what do you wish people my age understood about people your age? It's a little bit of a safer, more comfortable question than, what do you wish I understood about you? You know, you can. I mean, you could if that's your relationship. On a scale of 1 to 10, how is your mental health? Try that question. And then, do you feel like I listen to you? Now, I hear a lot of talk about resilience in Gen Z, and talking about it as like it's a fixed characteristic, like they're resilient or they're not resilient. But really, resilience is a skill developed over time with experience. But honestly, we have to be the resilient ones. Sometimes we walk to the young people and we go, oh, nope, I don't understand, back away, you know, like, and find my safe place that I can exist in where I'm not uncomfortable and I understand what everyone's talking about and I understand the things they're interested in. You know, no one likes being shut down. No one likes to reach out and not have that reciprocated. No one likes a door slammed in their face or have someone just give that, oh my gosh, the 8th grade girl look that's just like, you know, like just, no one likes that. But we will not let ourselves be pushed away by the next generation. We have to be the resilient ones. We have to be the ones that go and get rejected and then choose to go again and then get rejected and then choose to go again. Because if everyone walks up and says, I don't understand, and then backs away, then we have what we have right now. Gen Z, feeling alone, feeling anxious, feeling depressed, longing for connection, feeling like no one likes them. So we have to change the story. We move towards them. We be the resilient ones. We get ready to be rejected, to be turned down for the 10th time, and the 11th time, and the 12th time, because they matter. Because they're worthy of love. I was workshopping at a Young Life training with a bunch of young staff. And another staff person who's late 30s raised her hand and said, I've been reaching out to this kid, and I've reached out to her 4 or 5 times, and she hasn't responded to me. How many more times should I reach out? And one of the 20-something staff, the Gen Zers, she didn't even wait. She stood up, and she raised her hand. She goes, I've got an answer for that. I said, go for it. She goes, don't stop. She's like, the moment you stop, she'll know you're not there for her anymore. It'll take 10, 11, 20, 25 calls sometimes. But she knows that you think she's important. So our young people are telling us, please don't stop coming after us. Please get comfortable with being really uncomfortable because it is. It's a slow work with our next generation who is very much worth it. So I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be here tonight with y'all. This is my website. I have a website that has some videos and other resources on there as well as an Instagram site. So you can, I know, very Gen Z, right? Yeah, you can message me through there. And then like Chris said, so I have a book coming out this fall that really talks about 7 major questions that Gen Z is asking about life and faith, the context around those questions, and then how we can answer those questions and respond to the gospel and with discipleship. And we didn't even get into any of that tonight. So it's a whole other thing that's going on there. So I would love to open this to any Q&A, any questions y'all have. Chris is going to be our lovely, what is this? Yeah, will you be our roaming mic for this? Any questions y'all have after that conversation tonight?
Any questions?
No good.
You guys?
Questions?
Oh, one way in the back here. Yeah. Dan, do you mind running that over there? Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. I wanted to know, how do we not dismiss them, but at the same time build resiliency in them?
Okay, I'm not sure I totally heard it from, it's really hard to hear from these speakers up here. Yeah. Someone else, I couldn't hear it very well.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. How do we not dismiss them and build resiliency in them at the same time?
How do we not dismiss and build resiliency? It depends on the moment. I guess the things they're dealing with, what Lisa DeMore says, is that what we've been tricked into thinking, or at least our young people have been tricked into thinking, that good mental health is feeling good all the time. And actually, she would say good mental health is having the proper emotional response to the proper circumstances and then moving through those in an appropriate way. So, with loss, we feel grief. We're allowed to feel grief. We move through that, but we also move through that grief, and then we move on to something different. So some of it is we do have to allow our young people to feel their things. And actually, this is where we can help. Us older generations are really good at alternatives because at listening to music or scrolling, because we didn't have those options. So sometimes it was like throwing a rock at a tree, or like walking really fast, sometimes going for a drive, going for a run, punching a pillow, all those things where we're like, yeah, we're gonna go eat ice cream, like that's what we're gonna do, whatever it is, so we can help people move through some of that, so that they are allowed to feel things and move through them. The resiliency part is really it's that slow, painful walk next to folks. There's a couple experts, and I can't name them off the top of my head, who've said, our kids' ability to be resilient is usually capped by our ability to be comfortable with their discomfort and pain. So we allow our kids to be in as much pain as we want to feel, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought that was very interesting as far as how will I let my kids feel pain to the point where they have to figure out how to move through that obstacle. That's a very vague answer to a little bit of a vague question. I don't know if was that what you were looking for? Is there something more specific? No? Yes? We can talk later. Yeah. All right, other questions? Oh, right over here. Yeah. Here we go.
Gary, can you pass that down?
Okay, so your one concept that one of the message that this generation is getting is you have to be perfect, you can't make a mistake. Just wondering how you've seen that show up. I'm wondering myself, is that showing up as all or nothing, or being paralyzed, can't make a career decision, those sorts of things?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on people's personalities, but there's a lot of paralysis for sure of like, I don't want to make any move because what if I make a mistake on there? So you can also end up with people hiding things about who they are because they're afraid if someone knew these things that they were struggling with or the mistakes they were making, they could lose out on what people think about them. Mostly it's, I don't want to be judged. So this is what I see. I don't want to be judged, so I just won't share anything at all. So it really creates a relational distance. And even though it was a dynamic that was created in the social media circle, it has trickled into real life relationship pieces of it. So like again, kids that won't take risks. What if I try and I fail and the only person I have to blame was myself? That is a feeling that's very uncomfortable for a lot of our Gen Zers. And to have it point back to it was my failing and not someone else's, that coping mechanism, it has not quite been as well established there. So that's some of the ways we're seeing that of like, I'm gonna hide, really, yeah. Yes, well, we got a couple. This is so fun, watching you guys like run around with a microphone. I wish I had little flags or something, yeah. We got two more. We'll do these two, and then we'll close, and I'll stick around for any questions.
It seems a lot of the things that they struggle with due to their access to the internet, to the global community. Does refusing to give your kids smartphones protect them for that, or have you come across any Gen Zers who weren't given access, and how does that make them more disconnected? Does it protect them from some of the downfalls?
Yeah, that's a real feisty conversation right now that's happening. Jonathan Haidt has a lot of opinions on that, and you can look at him. He actually does have a stair-stepped ages at what he thinks people should have access to certain technology. There's, I think one of the things in our resources will be a guide that Axis came out with for parents on how to figure out like when your kids should have access to different things. The hard part is we're talking about some pretty high-level processing that we're asking young people to participate in. So self-aware, self-regulation, discernment, and discipline. When you're talking about all of a sudden access to everything in your hand. So, and not everyone handles it the exact same way, which is why there's not one-size-fits-all situation. It's kind of like saying, hey, sugar is really bad. We know sugar is bad for us, right? Okay, how my body metabolizes sugar and how my husband's body metabolizes sugar are very different, right? I can eat a lot more sugar than he can, but it's still bad. It's just that we're impacted by it differently, and so that's why there's not a really one-size-fits-all for technology. It becomes more of a conversation with our young people, and so I do not have Gen Zers at home. I have Gen Alphas at home. So we talk about it as like we're trying to build the muscles in your brain to be strong enough for when it's time for you to interact with this. And I think about it like driving a car. When we talk about technology, to say, hey, like you would not hand the keys of your car to your child and say, good luck, have fun, We would say, hey, come with me. I'm going to talk you through how I do all these things. You're going to watch me, and then I'm going to give you keys in a controlled environment and then move a little bit further and a little further out as they show they are able to navigate those things. So I like to think about technology in that way as far as working with our kids on it. The other way you can think about it too, and this is where I'm trying to figure out how to utilize technology and steward it. Now, the Bible doesn't talk about smartphones, right? It doesn't talk about social media. It does talk about money, and what I realized is that there's a pretty similar relationship between our relationship with technology and our relationship with money. That left to its own devices, money will destroy us. We have to learn how to have a healthy relationship with money, and then we have to learn how to use it the way God has asked us to use it for His kingdom and to steward it, not to be owners of it. And I realized that technology, left to its own devices, will destroy us. And we do have to learn how to have a healthy relationship with our technology and do the same thing. Lord, how am I supposed to steward this in a way that reflects how you would like me to use this? And that's some pretty darn high-level processing work that is more appropriate for older aged adolescents, like 20-somethings, than a 13-year-old. But it's a long journey, and part of it is because we have to look at our own relationship with technology at the same time. All right, this is the last question right here. Yeah. I'm
looking at your what Gen Z really wants to know about God.
Yes.
So I guess my question would be, in your experience, does having a knowledge, a personal relationship with Christ make a big impact on their life? Like non-Christians versus the Christian Gen Z.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't make anyone immune from the struggles that is within their generation, just like I'm not immune from the struggles of living in this cultural moment. But absolutely, and so you can look at other studies and non-believing studies or studies like Springtide, which studies religion, but not necessarily Christianity by itself, that talks about, generally, Gen Zers who believe in a higher power are more likely to flourish. Those who participate in communities that are religious are more likely to flourish. And then, of course, like you can get more into more specific studies that, yes, generally, our Gen Zers who have a relationship with Jesus Christ do better. It doesn't necessarily mean they don't struggle with the things that are around them, but that they have a different kind of anchor point to their life. Did you want to ask your question before? Yeah.
I do.
Yes.
I don't know. Okay, read this. So when you had your slide of your experience in high school and the noise and the access compared to current, it literally is foreign. It's trying to understand this alien race. And so I'm with you. Like, I'm come on, X. And I find I have a great lack of empathy when I have students coming in and they're like, I'm so overwhelmed. And I was like, well, just turn it in. Like, do it and give it to me. And I know part of my empathy grows and my compassion grows when I can understand it because I can experience it or something. But I don't get it. So other than that was perfect. How can we grow in our empathy and compassion for their level of anxiety that we have no clue of? How can we grow there?
Yeah, I think it's honestly just talking to our young people and asking, like, tell me about your day. Tell me the things you think about between the time you wake up and the time you leave for school. And that'll be a bucket of stuff before they even walked out their door. Because they've already had all the stuff that they're dealing with. Again, like, when we got up, there was just quiet in the house. You just got ready for school. You weren't like scrolling through other things and seeing other stuff. And we just did a small kind of conversation here. There's more conversation to be had around this. But if you just looked at phones, there's other things going on, but if you just looked at phones, there's a whole cultural norm that exists behind a screen that we don't understand generally because it's not our culture. But just the amount of pressure that young people feel to read and respond to things immediately is a cultural norm for them, right? So you might see a young person, they might have seriously 80 unread messages on their phones or whatever. That stresses me out, because I've grown up and I'm like, you just pick up and go, can't answer right now, I'll get back to you later this week, right? That would be a norm for someone like, my age. But for our young people, that's not kosher. That's not okay. To do that would be to say, you're not important for me enough to really recognize right now, so I'm putting you on pause. So their cultural norm is open it, respond. And so they will not open it because as soon as they open it, they have to respond. Because relationally, not respond or not open it, or opening it and not responding communicates something in the relationship that is broken that we don't understand. So all this stuff is happening, these places that are like, that doesn't make any sense to me, but it actually is in our space. So if I have a direct message in my Instagram, I'll use as an example. Chris, come on up here. I'm going to use this is my last example. Come on up, give it up for Chris. He's going to come up with me. All right. So let's say we're in the Instagram, and he direct messages me, all right, and it's like, ooh, there you go. Yeah. You can say, hey, you did a great job tonight, right?
You did a great job.
Perfect. Now, if I open it and don't read it, it's like I did this. Yeah. So that's how the feeling is. Now, the other option is I can like it, right? I can double tap and like it, which would be the same as me going. All right? Now, if Chris and I are in a friendship, what I would do is I would respond to him. Thanks so much, Chris. Like, heart, applause. You're such a good friend, And that would be the relationship, right? Well, we can't see all that dynamic going on, and so what we don't realize is when that happens, someone opens it and they walk away, or we could watch that in real life. I could see someone talk to someone and walk away and watch someone go like this, but we can't see it on the screen, which is what makes it a little bit harder to understand all the relational dynamics that are going on. And that is just relationships in one app. Now multiply that by 100. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to close in prayer so you can close.
Wait,
Yeah?
Before you close
Okay.
in prayer, I got a question.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat
Okay.
because I've got the mic. So your doctorate was in how to share the gospel with kids, and in your book you cover kind of discipleship in general. Tonight we've got people from across our community. We also have a lot of folks from here at the church. Could you just take a second and talk to us a little bit about how to talk to Gen Zers about spiritual matters and about God? I know this is a whole different talk,
That's
right?
a whole book.
Yeah, it's the whole book, right? But can you just kind of give us a snapshot or some suggestions about how to do that, or some pointers you'd give us, or 3 to 4 minutes, if you would?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
that
thank you
sounds
so
good.
much. Yeah.
All right, so even just looking at those messages we talked about that surround Gen Z, we can find an entry point for the gospel with them, right? So let's talk about there's no room for error. Perfection is demanded of you at all times. To understand how they're internalizing it, right, and how they're navigating the world with that helps us understand, how do I interact with the gospel net? Now, we have to understand, remember, this is paired with high levels of loneliness, suicide rates, anxiety, depression. So to come by and say, you're right, God did demand perfection, and you're not it. Like to come by with that would be problematic at that moment, right? Instead, we have a God who absolutely made room by offering us grace and forgiveness for those who follow him. That can you make a mistake? Does God have you? And actually, the Bible says we actually get to clothe ourselves in his righteousness. We get to claim his righteousness as our own because we cannot be perfect, but we have a God who is. So you can rest in that when you make a mistake, that there's a God who will receive you. And you make another mistake, and your God will receive you. Can you make enough mistakes for God to stop receiving you? No. Jesus talks about that, right? Especially when people are like, how many times do I got to forgive my brother over here? I mean, come on, there's got to be a limit to this, right? No. So what kind of exhale and relax, like rest, go, I don't worry about being perfect all the time. I don't worry about that. I live in a freedom and joy of knowing that God loves me. He said I was enough from the very beginning of time to make a plan for me to be with him, right? So this shifts the gospel from saying, yes, God demanded perfection. You were not it. In fact, you will never be enough. And so God died for you, which is one theological line. And that's partially true. And then what's also true is God assigned value to him, or assigned you value by putting his image on you, by deciding before you were born in the very, very beginning of time, the Father, Son, and Spirit said, we're going to work salvation this way because you're worth it. Because I decided you were worth it. Because I decided there was going to be nothing between me and the one I loved. That I would do anything and give anything because you're worth it. God's love gave us value. And because of that value, he worked a way of redemption to be with him through his Son and through the Trinity. So that becomes a little bit different of focus to say, look at this message of the world saying, you're not enough. We don't come by and say, you're right. You're not. Because they're not asking like, am I righteous enough for God? Am I righteous enough for holy God? That's not what they're asking. The heart of that question of, am I enough, is, will God like me? Does God notice me? What do I have to do for God to love me? What do I have to do to be enough for him to care about me? And that's a very different question that we can come at with the gospel. Say, no, God decided before you were born, you were enough to be valued, to be loved, and made a way to capture you in his grace so that mistake after mistake, he's not saying there's no room for error. He's saying, I got you because the Son is perfect. Is that helpful? Oh, thank you.
So I interrupted you when you were going to pray.
I was going to get these people home, so I was going to close in prayer, but unless you had other announcements.
I do have a couple things. So as a reminder, you can get this talk. It doesn't have that video that was played just because of copyright reasons, but you can get this talk if you click on that QR code. And this week, we'll send you a little packet of information that Tanita and the office have put together. It'll have the PowerPoint that she gave you. It'll have the a recording of this session, and it'll be a great resource for you. And you can share that with people as you like. And Tanita has made this available for us, so want to encourage you to take advantage of that. And so I hope tonight's been valuable. Can we tell Tanita thank you for doing this for us? Yeah. And although this is not a book pitch, I would encourage you. I think this book that InterVarsity is going to be putting out. Oh, you got it up there. Nice, yeah. Anyway, that list for that book will be how you get that book is on that list you can pick up. I'd encourage you to pick it up. I just think what Tanita's done with her work on how to explain the gospel to young people as well as understanding their world has been amazing. And I'm really looking forward to InterVarsity putting this out, and I think it'll be really helpful. And she's one of us, so this is awesome, right? So let you pray, and I'll get out of your hair.
Yeah,
Sounds
we pray
good?
for y'all,
Yep.
and then I'll stick around for any questions people have. All right, God in heaven. I'm so grateful for the people here tonight who said, I don't know, but I want to know. I know you are sending them into the life of a young person, whether it's someone in their family, someone in their neighborhood, someone in this church. Give them the courage and strength to be resilient. Give them the patience to understand when they don't. Give them your eyes to see how the young people in front of them reflect your image. Make them a powerful, powerful force of holding up Gen Z so that they can take the baton and reach the next generation after them. How will they know if we do not show them how to do that? Lord, give us young people. Give us the young people long enough that we can share with them the good news of Jesus Christ. In your name, amen. Amen. Thank you. Good night.